I start off by loosely roughing in some basic shapes and blocking in my figure, while drawing super lightly so I can easily erase it and adjust it as I want. I'm going for a pose with a fair amount of foreshortening in it to really make this figure feel dynamic and a sense of motion to fit with our character. Now for this phase, I use a soft blue 0.7mm Eno lead, and I just fill it in any old mechanical pencil. Now once I'm happy with that, we move on to the penciling stage. I begin by solidifying some of the previous line work while adding a bit more of the musculature to the figure. In this phase, I'm using a Stadler mechanical case with a 2H lead, and I use the 2H lead because it is a harder lead and therefore it is harder for it to smudge. Now I lay out all the details of Spider-Man's costume before I move on to the shading portion. Here I am essentially testing out where I want to place the shadows before I go over them in ink, just to make sure I got it right where I want it. This phase is also where I add most of my muscular definition, as I feel it's better to allude to those various muscle groups rather than completely outlining them. Now for the webbing. This is probably my favorite part of drawing Spider-Man. Now every artist has their own way to go about it, but I use a technique called spaghetti webs, which got its name as it looks like noodles shooting out and wrapping around each other, which oddly enough makes a very cool effect. And the last thing that I do before moving on to ink is to add some cross-hatching. This is where we go back to our shadows and add a series of parallel lines to form a sort of a gradient from the shadow to the light. Personally, I think it adds a whole lot to a piece, and you could probably say I go a little overboard with them here. Once I'm happy with that, I move on to inking. I use various micron pens in various sizes for my line work. I'm starting out with a 0.5mm outline, my figure, my costume details, and even adding a little bit of a reflection in the lenses. I move on to a 0.2 to go over the larger webbing in the foreground, and move on to a 0.05mm on the long strand in the background, just so I can add as much detail as possible into such a small space. Then we begin adding the thick and heavy shadows to the figure. This phase is quite simple, as we're really just going over the pencil that we already laid down before, but we're taking it real slow to be as accurate as possible and clean as possible. Now to add the cross-hatching. Now I like to make the base of my parallel lines a bit thicker, just add a little extra to the gradient that we're trying to get across with this line shading. Now all we gotta do is erase all of our pencil lines so we can move on to color. For this piece, I'm going to be using a set of markers that I've actually never used before. Ohuhu, I think it's pronounced. Ohuhu, I don't know. Now these are alcohol-based, which allows for that seamless blending and gradients. And I bought these as an alternative to Copics. Now I have a fair amount of Copics. They're great to use and I love them, but they have a very daunting price tag. I bought this set for like $50 on Amazon, while a Copic set of the same size can run you upwards of $300. So I thought I'd give these a try. So I start off with the lightest shade of red for a base tone before moving on into my two darker tones. Now this phase is also a great time where you can allude to some more muscles without necessarily outlining them completely. You can see this in his pectoral muscles, as there are a few sections to that muscle group that I defined by adding some darker tones of red to show where the plane might differ in height. Now I use 3 tones of red and 3 tones of blue with a lighter, normal tone and a darker tone, with my heaviest shadows really helping with showing the high and low point across the figure. Once I'm happy with that, my final step is to go around my entire figure and adding a bit of a thicker outline. Now I do this for 2 reasons, with one being that it acts as a bit of a cleanup for where I may have gone over the edges with my color, and the second being that it really solidifies the character and makes them pop just a bit more off the page. And now, cue the epic reveal. I hope you guys are as happy with the result as I am. Now please comment down below who or what else you'd like me to draw in another video. Now there's a video right here that I'm sure you'll enjoy, so check that out. And with that, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Deuces.